Hi guys, and welcome to the Jinn and Tonic show. We help Muslims and non-Muslims to handle Islam in the 21st century. My name is Mustafa and this is my co-host in the nick of time. If you wish to talk about Islam, the ideology, you have come to the right place. We cover current Islamic news, Islamic scripture, some crazy comments, and a weekly topic about Islam to examine, critique, and analyze. If this is not enough Islam for you, please drop by our Discord to discuss any further questions about Islam. We condemn any form of discrimination, violence, misogyny, slavery. However, we do embrace free speech and criticism if it's factual and correct. Thank you for stopping by and enjoy the Gin and Tonic show.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today, my friend, my co-host, in the nick of time, Nick?
I'm doing well. I gotta punish everyone now that I spent some money on camera. So they gotta see my face from now on.
Unfortunately, you won't see my face. Well, actually, you are technically seeing my face, just that my camera is a bit being weird. So, basically, yeah, it's going to have to be probably another show or something like that. So now, this week's topic, I wanted to do specifically on, what do you call it, 21st of Ramadan, 22nd, today's the 22nd of Ramadan. And it was the date of the assassination of Ali Bin Abu Talib, one of Muhammad's successors and one of his biggest companions. So it's a historical figure that we're going to talk about in today's episode. But before we get into it, Nick, did you want to share anything?
As of now, no. But is there any particular memes or such that I sent that you personally like that you want me to share?
Actually, let's do the memes at the end. Memes at the end, and then let's jump into what we're doing today. So I'm gonna screen share. I'm gonna share screen. Share screen. Just a Chrome tab, and just I have prepared a presentation on the historical figure Ali bin Abu Talib. So this you'll find interesting, whether you're watching it now or later. You'll find this very interesting. So you can see this?
Yes, I can see it.
Perfect. So, so what I'm going to discuss is who is this person, the significance of Ali in Islam, different roles in Islam. There's literature about him, his heroism, the crimes he's committed, and also his role in playing in the divide of Islam to this day, which is the Shia and Sunni Islam. So Shia and Sunni split that we have to this day. His assassination and its significance in Ramadan. And, we'll also look into, did this man even exist? Or is he a fictional character? We'll look into different depictions of Ali. We'll talk about his shrine, which I found something very interesting about his shrine. And some random hadith status that we're going to talk about today. So
I actually have a little something about this guy. If this guy really did cause the split of Islam, I think someone really has something to say about him.
Oh, someone does? What did they say?
Yeah.
You naughty. You teasing me, you naughty.
Oh boy. Someone really. Yeah, that's definitely. He was definitely naughty. Now, quick summary. He is the cousin and son-in-law of Muhammad, like the alleged final messenger and founder of Islam. And he was married to his daughter Fatima. So he was also the son of his uncle, Muhammad's uncle, Abu Talib. So the guy, Abu Talib was the guy who protected Muhammad to his last day. He was a very important figure in the Quraysh, according to the narrative. And allegedly, he didn't even convert to Islam, quote unquote. So this is very significant as well. And this is also significant point of contention, you can say. Then he was also one of the fourth Rashidun Caliph. Now, Rashidun Caliphate means that these are the four rightly guided caliphs that reigned between after Muhammad's death until 661. So he was the fourth. And he was born on the 600 CE. I forgot to write the date. Forgot to write the, hey, good evening, PO. Good evening. We hope to get some information from you, PO. All right, so where was I? Okay. He was assassinated in 661 CE by Ibn Mulchan. So during the morning prayers on the 19th of Ramadan, he was attacked by a poisonous sword, and then he died of the injuries on the 21st of Ramadan. So this is commemorated every year by mostly Shia Muslims, that is. Mostly Shia Muslims, every single year. And allegedly, there's a debate whether he was the first male convert or whether he was first child convert. Because apparently, some say that he converted at the age of 10 years old. And some say he converted to Islam at the age of 13 or 14 when Muhammad was giving out his message. So this is where, we have this dispute that Ali was, it's disputed what age did he convert to Islam. Also, hi, Smile. So now, how many informations are you want to buy? So, all right. Now, what's his significance? So he's kind of seen like this, the Aaron to Muhammad's Moses, except he's not exactly a prophet. Though some groups did see him, that some extinct Shia groups did see him as the prophet more than Muhammad. They thought that Gabriel was mistaken. So, but those groups are extinct. In Shia Islam, he's the first of the 12 imams. The name Shia comes from Shia of Ali, or the party of Ali, or the friends or followers of Ali. So Shia means, the term it means is follower. So, and in the Shia calls of prayer, the term, when they say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, which is there's no God and Muhammad is the prophet of God. But then they also add Ashhadu anna Aliyan Waliullah, which is the term which means Ali is the friend of God. So the Shia call of prayer, this is what the distinction that it has with the Sunni call of prayer, is that the Shia prayer uses Ali and Waliullah. And in Sufism, I wish Dr. Faiz was here. He would have had something to say about this. Most Sufi orders, they trace their lineage to Muhammad through Ali bin Abu Talib. And I've spoken to some followers of Sufism, and they see Ali as a spiritual successor and the first Sufi master in some orders. He's also seen as the standard bearer of warriors, kind of like King Arthur, so to speak. Like the King Arthur is seen in the English legends, Ali's holds a similar position in the history of Islam as like the standard bearer of warriors, because he's seen as the best warrior of all time in Islamic history. Then you have Sunni Muslims who view Ali as the greatest warrior of Islam. Of course, yeah, this is the view of the Sunni Muslims. Today, it's alleged that he's buried in Najaf in Iraq, which is close to Kufa, and it attracts countless pilgrims every year to Iraq. There's also a Mazar-e-Sharif in Afghanistan, which also claims to be the shrine of Ali that allegedly he's buried there. So there's also dispute here as whether he's buried in Najaf, Iraq, or whether he's buried in Afghanistan. If I were to pick, I kind of pick Najaf, Iraq as a more likely place because based on the narrative, he was assassinated in Masjid al-Khufa, which is the mosque, the Grand Mosque of Kufa. Now, he's also there's also this religion of Alevism as well in Turkey, which is quite famous in regards to Ali. By the way, Nick, do you have any questions or any concerns or anything like that?
None from me. But I think Smile made a quick comment here.
Oh
So
yeah, we're actually going to discuss Nahj al-Balagha as well, Peak of Eloquence, and a collection not only of letters but of sermons as well as sayings. I'll actually look into the history of Nahj al-Balagha in this because I have covered as much as possible in this. So right now we're just covering the basics, where it's in Alevism there is this belief that there's a unity of Allah, Muhammad, and Ali. It's kind of similar to the Trinity. It's many say it's misunderstood as the Trinity, as Ali and Muhammad are only representations of Allah's light, but not Allah himself. But one can actually make the argument that this does form a Trinity of its own. In Alevism, as well as Shia 12-ver Islam, in the Islamic Shahada, you know the Islamic Shahada, I bear no witness that Allah is the only God and Muhammad is his messenger, like La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. But
it's somewhat similar to the atheist Shahada. I bear witness that the one true astrophysicist is Stephen Hawking.
But yeah, instead, in Alevism as well as Shia 12-ver Islam, they add Ali is the friend of God, or Ali and Waliullah is part of the Shahada. So this is also what distinguishes Shia Islam, Alevism, and Alawites from mainstream Sunni Islam, that is. And Shia Muslims, to this day, as I stated earlier, he still commemorate from 18th of Ramadan till the 21st of Ramadan. Every year, it's commemorated his birth, like there was a morning session. So it's a 4-5 day morning session in the middle of Ramadan itself. So, this kind of contradicts the claim that chained devils are chained because he got assassinated, but we'll get to that. He has titles including Lion of God, which is Sher Khuda, or Amir al-Mu'mineen, which is leader of the faithful. Alawites, like the Shia, Alawites see him as very divine. There is a misconception that Alawites see him as a god, which is not the case, but they do see him as divine. The Shia see him as also one of the 14 infallibles. So they recognize Muhammad and his daughter Fatima as the infallibles, and the 12 imams. So these are called the 14 infallibles of Shia Islam. So means that these 14 are supposed to be perfect, quote unquote, perfect. So now, like Smile said, there's a lot of literature about Ali bin Abu Talib, specifically the Nahj al-Balagha. Now, Nahj al-Balagha is basically the most known source. It was, but then there's others. But when we look into the history of Ali himself, just like Muhammad, he's never mentioned but instead, Muhammad is still mentioned in the Quran. Ali is not even mentioned in the Quran, though many claim that he's mentioned indirectly. But in reality, if you look at the Quranic text, Ali is not even mentioned. His first mention actually came in the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, just like Muhammad. And of course, this was edited by Ibn Hisham, so we all know. Another early source that mentions him is Sulaim bin Qais, the Hadith Book, which is, it's debated whether it's authentic, but it is one of the 8th century books, like around 750 CE. That book was compiled and written. So this is also one of the earlier sources that that mentions Ali. And in this source, allegedly, Ali had his own copy of the Quran. There was also the dispute that he had with Abu Bakr and Umar, where Abu Bakr became the Caliph and Ali was denied the Caliphate. And they tried to force him to give allegiance to Abu Bakr's Caliphate. So they actually brought him as a prisoner. So they raided his house, they burned down this house. There was even a huge encounter. and he surrendered only because, like, for the safety of his children. So Ali was forced to accept Abu Bakr as the Caliph, even though many saw Ali was seen as the successor of Muhammad. So this brings a very contentious issue in Islam to this day. Like, this is the one contentious issue, and that has caused problems within Islam. Now, I also mentioned here the Abu Mikhnaf in the second last point. He's the historian in the 770s. He wrote about the Battle of Safin against Muawiyah, which was fought in Syria. That is, this is part of the during the 660s, 650s, 657. This war was fought, and this was what split the empire and actually ended the Rashidun Caliphate. And Tabari's history in the 900s also has extensive reports on Ali's caliphate. Like, Tabari mentions that this was where you could see that the community of the Muslims was divided. So this was the time the Muslim community was divided. Basically, yes, another sticking point, the amount of time it took Ali to give bay'ah. Yeah. If anything, to answer your question, Smiles, yes, it was not only did it take time, it took force to get him to surrender. And he only surrendered with a closed fist, which Abu Bakr was telling Umar, okay, stop, Umar. I can't take this torture anymore. So he accepted Ali's closed fist as an allegiance. So it was even a half-baked allegiance, so to speak. So it kind of goes to show that the first Islamic caliphate, the rightly guided caliphate, itself has a little flaw over there. Like, there is some issues even within Islam itself. So even not all companions were in favor of Abu Bakr. And yeah, Smiles, you mentioned Nahj al-Balagha as well. It was the compilation. I actually noted down the history. I found this in the Oxford University Press of Karachi. And what I found interesting is that someone actually did, again, allegedly, someone started making the effort of collecting Ali's sermons. This was by Zayd ibn Wahab Jahni, according to a book called Rijal Kabir. And this man, Wahab Jahni, he died at 710 CE. So in the 700s, after Ali died in 660, 661, roughly speaking, and this is within just about 50 years. It took 50 years, and there's some sermons of his that start, but we don't have the manuscript of this. But allegedly, we can see some sermons started to compile. Then you had more sermons. Nothing happens in the Umayyad Caliphate after that. And then suddenly we have during the Abbasid regime, around the 750, 762, another 50 years later, we have more writers like Abdul Hamid bin Yahya and Ibn al-Muqufa, who start compiling more works about Ali. Then I found in the 3rd century Hijri, 300 years, 200 years after Ali's passing, you have Abu Usman Omero bin Bahar al-Juhuz, as well as 5 other authors. This was a long list of people who were compiling sermons. So these sermons grew and grew in number. There's a lot of sermons, possibly added or possibly quoted. So these sermons were added. And then in the 4th century age, which is the 900s, we have Tabari. Tabari, our favorite guy, who mentions, in his history, he gives references to many sermons, and, he writes extensively about Ali. And then finally, in the 5th century, or 420 AH, which is roughly 1040 CE. So we're already in the 11th century, 500 years later. Finally, the Nahj al-Balagha is compiled by Sayyid Razi. And this is a compilation of letters, sermons, and sayings, and all that stuff. We might do a future episode on Nahj al-Balagha and what's so special about it. But because there's so much to cover, I couldn't get everything. So I do apologize for that. But this is the history of the Nahj al-Balagha itself, 500 years of compilation. So this is it's kind of shows the efficiency of the Islamic world in sort of compiling historical documents. Now, of course, he's seen as a hero, and he's also seen as a villain too. Now, I'll discuss the heroism part first, because in the Battle of Badr, it was Ali and Hamza. Even in the mess of the movie, we kind of see this, even though we just see Ali's sword.
Wait, was it Hamza Redbeard?
No, not Hamza Redbeard. No, definitely not Redbeard. This Hamza was white bearded, and he was played by Anthony Quinn, of all people, in the movie The Message from 1973. So, this is definitely not Hamza Redbeard for sure. Screw him. Screw Hamza Redbeard. But yeah, this Hamza was also like quite a frequent drinker as well, and he was the uncle of Muhammad. So Ali and Hamza were the ones who broke the ranks of the Quraysh and were able to gain victory in the Battle of Badr. However, in the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims, they faced defeat and they fled. And Muhammad was allegedly injured, and allegedly there were rumors that Muhammad got killed in the battle. So Ali went back, and he was the one who rescued and injured Muhammad and brought him back. So this is something that's in Ali's biographies, that he's the one who rescued Muhammad from getting killed. So my apologies. So he's seen as a hero. And also in the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, along with many biographies, Ali's heroism is displayed in the Battle of Khandak, which is the Battle of the Trench. He fights a giant called Amr bin Abdul Wad. Now, this is a very similar situation to David versus Goliath, a very David versus Goliath situation, except these two have swords. And Ali defeats Amr bin Abdul Wad. And, he gains victory in the Battle of the Trench. Because in the trench battle, what they do is they dig a giant trench, and it prevents the Quraysh's army, or the Meccan army, from crossing over. So they were not able to cross over except Amr. Amr bin al-Wad was able to use his horse and jump over the trench. And he actually challenged the Muslims, bring out your best warrior. And no one had the balls to come out. So no one had the balls to come out except Ali. So Ali was this 25, 27-year-old kid, or probably younger, allegedly speaking, depending on when the battle took place. And he saw him as, oh, what is this boy doing here? So then Ali, they agreed to fight, and then Ali beheaded, basically, when he took Amr down, Amr spat on his face. Ali was like, okay, I respect you. So this was very, kind of like a very interesting fight that takes place in the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, and Ali defeats him. Then in the Battle of Khaybar, a lot of people have a misconception that Ali was the one who defeated Marhab, the Jewish warrior. However, with someone else who defeated him, Ali was the one who broke the gate. That is, he was able to get through the gate in Khaybar and enter the city. Now, there are supernatural stories of Ali being able to lift the gate, break the gate and open it, just like, when you saw the debut of Cain, when he breaks the cage and he enters the ring and faces the Undertaker, if you've seen that in the pay-per-view. So something similar, people kind of reimagine Ali doing. So just imagine Cain doing that from WWE. Now, however, we know Battle of Khaybar was where they killed Banu Pereza, so we will discuss that as well, was one of his crimes. Now we're going to discuss the crimes of Ali. So based on, if you're a homosexual or committed sodomy, and based on the Shia collection of Al-Kafi, so Al-Kafi and Bihar al-Anbar are the two famous Shia collections. So I quoted Al-Kafi in here. And Al-Kafi states from the following: these are the three punishments for homosexuality and sodomy. So no anal sex and no homosexuality. If you do commit it, these are the punishments: a blow or a deadly strike on the neck with a sword, that will take whatever it takes. You're thrown off the mountain with hands and feet tied, or you're burnt in the fire. Like literally, you're burned alive. So these are the three prescribed punishments by Ali himself. And what's funny is that ISIS used number 2 and 3 most common for punishing homosexuals. And ISIS was inspired by this. And this is and these are because we already had the
Hey, that's an organization of peace, all right? Don't associate.
We're associating ISIS with peace, eh? Now, sorry, CIA. We're joking. We're joking, CIA.
Yeah, no, we're only following what Daniel Hikikachu told us.
Exactly, we're doing. So now, other homosexual like crimes when they, according to Mishkat al-Masabi, Ibn Abbas is narrated that Ali had 2 homosexuals burned. So this, and then you have Sunnah ibn Majah, where Ali says, I would not pay blood money for those whom I carried out a legal punishment, except the wine drinker. For the Messenger of Allah did not institute anything in that case. Rather, it was something we would do. So, hang on. He's kind of admitting that they used to drink wine and they used to drink booze. And the Messenger of Allah did not have any punishment for drinking wine. So he said that I would not. Blood money is basically, what you would give in exchange of, you murdered somebody, so you would give blood money. This tribal practice that still is instituted to this day in the Quran and the Hadith as well. So here Ali is saying, I would not pay blood money to those who I carried out a legal punishment, except the wine drinker. He said, if I accidentally kill a wine drinker, I'll give him money, the blood money. I'll give the family blood money, because Muhammad did not have a specific punishment for drinking alcohol. So, Nick, if you decide to drink alcohol and if you decide to convert to Islam, technically you don't have any punishment against you. You've just committed sins. That's all. So you're kind of safe, Nick.
Yeah, no, that was the only thing stopping me from taking the Shahada. So if you want to incite me,
all right. And now I talk about Ali, the slave owner, as well. Like, he owned slaves. This is something we have to admit as well. And according to Sahih al-Bukhari, this hadith I found, Muhammad's prophet sent Ali to Khalid to bring the hummus, and I hated Ali. And Ali had taken a bath after a sexual act with a slave girl from the hummus. I said to Khalid, don't you see this? That is Ali. When we reached the Prophet, I mentioned that to him. He said, oh, Bureda. So Bureda is the one who narrating this. Do you hate Ali? I said, yes. He said, do you hate him? For he deserves more than that from the hummus. So he deserves more slave girls? So, sorry about that. And so Ali did have sex slave status. So he did have, so according to this hadith, Qambar, he had male slaves as well. Like, Qambar was a very known slave. Ali bought Mesam al-Tamar, who was the son of Yahya. The name means date seller for some reason. Sa'id was a famous slave as well. Allegedly, he freed these 3 slaves, male slaves, because he liked them a lot. And we have someone joining us. Hello, Stops. Hello, Ali.
Hello, guys. How's it going? I just realized I'm late again, half an hour, and I thought, jeepers, why am I always managing this? Okay, but at least I've made it. Better than last time.
Much better than last time, and the good stuff is yet to come, Stops, because you are Ali Bin Abu Talib in this picture. And I love this picture. So
no, I'm not. This is the prince from Cinderella.
Oh my God. It just happens to look like that painting.
It's so funny. A lot of people talk about exactly this. And I think to myself, how do these guys know how somebody or what somebody looked like 1,000 years ago. Why is it that all these people think that this is exactly the picture of what he looked like? I mean, do they have his passport photo or what is it?
Well, to be honest with you, I have tried to find the source of this painting, and I have struggled finding the source of this painting because no one knows who's the artist behind this. So that's the mystery. And yes, welcome Zain Sami.
Hi.
How are you doing today, Zain?
I'm good. How's everybody here?
Oh, we're okay. We're okay. We're
Yeah,
joined
my
by.
apologies for being a little bit late. I hope I haven't missed the good parts.
Well, we are. You just came at the good part as Ali being the slave owner. That is. So
That's good. Yeah. So
yeah.
Ali,
So,
I like this character. Let me just say this. I like this character, so I'm here to learn today.
yeah. So we discussed, like, he did what do you call it, have punishments for homosexuals. He is a slave owner, but we discussed his heroism because he's seen as the hero in the Battle of Badr, Battle of
Yes.
Talhah. He rescued Muhammad. In Sirah ibn Ishaq, he defeated that giant in Khaybar as well. We also talked about Nahj al-Balagha and the literature and his significance. And he was, so we're going to get to more good parts as well, like the political aspect of it. So what else did we discuss?
And I've got some questions as well about him.
Yeah. And let's see here. So I was at Najal. Okay, so so he said, yeah, someone actually did two due dates, said so drinking wine was okay, but like having a sex slave, drinking wine was not okay, but it's weird. It's just really weird. So, but Ali had 9
It's
wives.
right here.
Who?
The dude Abide says it's not okay to drink alcohol, but raping slave girls is okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's Islam for you. That's Islam for you.
Even if she's married.
Even if she's married, can't forget 424, man.
And Umar, Umar, the other caliph, the second caliph, he used to drink alcohol and rape slave girls, right?
Yeah.
And one time he got caught having sex with someone else's slave girl during Ramadan.
I think I don't remember that, but I do remember, because I did mention the hadith here in Sunnah ibn Majah. Ali is saying, I would not pay blood money for those whom I carried out legal punishment except the wine drinker. For the Messenger of Allah did not institute anything in that case. Rather, it was something we would do. So Ali is kind of admitting that we used to drink wine and we used to drink. So there was, even though it was a sin, there was no punishment for it. So this was very interesting that, they still drank, like the Sahaba would be still drinking. So, the alcohol ruling is a bit like inconsistent, so to speak. But now we get to the good part, the massacre of Banu Pereza, or the males of Banu Pereza. So according to Ibn Ishaq's account, Muhammad and Saad had ordered the men and boys of Banu Pereza, boys who had even grown pubic hair, to be killed. And there were roughly, the number is between 400 to 900 Jewish men of the Banu Pereza tribe. And Ali bin Abu Talib was amongst the executioners. Even according to Shia books like Kitab al-Sahih min Sirah al-Imam by Jafar Murtaza, he states that Ali was the commander-in-chief and the executioner of the Banu Pereza. So he was the main executioner who carried out that punishment. And I had a conversation with the Master Arab too. The Master Arab said, I do find Ali sometimes is a decent guy, but he did a lot of crimes under the orders of Muhammad. And this was one of the biggest ones, the massacre of Banu Pereza. So any questions, guys? Any concerns?
I've got some, but I think I'll do them at the end.
All right. Yeah, we'll finish this up. So Ali's right to succeed. This is what caused the divide of Islam, and it's been debated to this day. And I write here, yes, all 1.8 billion Muslims are in contention of who was the rightful successor to Muhammad. All 1.8 million of them. And the ultimate divide was into Shia and Sunni. And there were previous, of course, subsects as well. Now, the Sunni believed that Muhammad had chosen Abu Bakr. The Shia believe Ali was chosen as the rightful successor. And the Shia even quote the Ghadir Qum, or the Pond of Qum, Pond of Ghadir, as the incident where Muhammad announces in Sirah Ibn Sa'd, not Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Sa'd, was the first Sirah. This was much longer after Ibn Ishaq that he was mentioned in the Ghadir incident, where Muhammad announces Ali as, his successor. Now, some sources...
Moose, then that would beg the question, if there's such conflict in who the the next successor is, how can you guarantee that the actual records or the lineage or chain of custody of the actual articles that were published at that time aren't tainted by the other sex or the conflict? How can it remain neutral for us to
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. If they can't agree on who the successor is, how on earth can we be sure that the history that they've put down is actually accurate?
Exactly.
Because whoever is in charge obviously can change and manipulate history, and we know that.
And this is based on Shia and Sunni writers have varying, based on their faith, that is. Even Ismaili, Shia, Twelver as well have different incidents. And like I said, Ibn Sa'd was the one who wrote about the Ghadir Qum incident, not Ibn Ishaq. It's not even in the earliest source, because Muhammad didn't exactly choose a successor to begin with. So, and what's interesting is that the Saqifa incident, which I think was written around the Abbasid period, because a lot of this stuff was written in the Abbasid period. Keep that in mind. None of this was written either in the Rashidun period or the Umayyad period. Everything was written during the Abbasids. And so even some sources, some Shia sources I found, say that while Ali was performing the funeral of Muhammad, the rest of the companions, the Ansar, the Muhajirun, Abu Bakr, Umar, they were in the assembly hall of Saqifa, where they were arguing amongst themselves who would succeed. They had almost like there was a breakdown as well, until like Abu Bakr in that entire mess was declared the successor by Umar. And everybody agreed on Abu Bakr as the successor to Muhammad. So this is
before Muhammad is actually buried, yeah?
Yeah.
They're already fighting about who the successor is.
Yeah, before Muhammad is even buried. So in that mess, and this is according to the history of Tabari, as well as the history status, that Abu Bakr was just declared the successor by the believers themselves, because Muhammad hadn't chosen anybody in his deathbed either.
Yeah.
So it was that's why it's such a contentious issue. Many Shia claim that he had chosen Ali, but keep in mind a lot of Shia sources come centuries after Ibn Ishaq and all these the primary sources, that is. So there's no way to verify if their version of history is correct.
But wait.
Yeah.
The Shias claim that our version of history is the original version. So where does that claim come from?
The Shia history. So what they claim is that the Umayyads and during the Umayyad period we were suppressed, and the books were banned and we couldn't say anything, and we said everything after the Abbasid period or during the Abbasid period. So that's the claim. That's how they make that. They justify that claim. However, personally, from my standpoint, I'm like, you might have a bit of weight, but there's a little problem with that, because we could have found at least some manuscript, something that could have stated that, but we find nothing.
And where do these books come in? Ibn Sa'd, Ibn Ishaq. When do these come into the picture?
Ibn Ishaq comes around 750s, the 750s, that is. So this is after.
Yeah, well after all of this.
Yeah. However, I did discuss the compilation of Nahj al-Balagha, where in 90 Hijri, or this author called Zayd ibn Wahab Jahmi, he starts compiling letters and sermons by Ali, and he died around 710 CE. Ali died in 660, 661. So allegedly, but this is according to a book called Rijal al-Kabir. Now, 50 years, they allege that, he started compiling his sayings. And then everything stops there at 710, the turn of the 7th century. But then 40, 50 years later, there's more compilers like Abdul Hamid and al-Maqufa. And then we have in the 3rd century, we have Bahr al-Juhuz and 5 others compiling more sermons. Then we have Tabari's history in the 4th century of Hijri, or 900s. And then Razi, Sayyid Razi, compiles the Nahj al-Balagha, or the sermons and sayings of Ali and the letters, in 1040 CE. Final compilation. And this is roughly the final compilation at 1040 CE of the Nahj al-Balagha. So it kind of shows that, we don't have much. Sure, there might have been something, but it must have been very minuscule, very limited. And then it just grew.
And Nahj al-Balagha is where you get all of the stuff that Ali said, yeah? All of his quotations, all of his
quotations, yeah. All of his letters, his sermons. And and I actually plan to do a future episode on what makes Nahj al-Balagha so special. But because there's a lot to discuss today, so that's why I was I can't get any quotes from there. Because I have to read the entire book. So
also, Zain, if you have headphones, if you want to use them, sometimes I'm getting a bit of echo feedback from your end.
From me?
Yes. If you once in a while we're getting some echo feedback. So if you have headphones, that generally fixes it.
All right, I'll see if I can reach out to some.
Yeah, no, but I don't think I'm. Yes,
Moose, I know that you're pretty thorough with these things. Are you going to go into the political role of Ali as well?
Yes, and I'm actually starting that right now. The wars. We'll start with the wars of the Caliphate, that is, because when Ali was declared Caliph, according to Tabari, this was the community divided, and Usman had just been assassinated, murdered. So there was a battle of Jamal. But Aisha, Muhammad's child bride, actually grew into a political leader at this time. Aisha, Talhah, the man she had an affair with, allegedly, and Zubair mobilized their forces in Iraq. And they demanded Ali to punish the murderers of Usman. And now Ali here was accused of sheltering Muhammad bin Abu Bakr's son. Now, Abu Bakr's son was one of the rebels that actually broke into Usman's house. And, there was multiple people surrounding Usman's house and had him murdered. And it's actually described in quite gruesome detail. So,
yeah. Interestingly, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr was raised by Ali. Is that true?
Yeah. Yes, that is true. Like Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, after Abu Bakr had died, Ali took him as he became an orphan. So Ali took him under his wing.
Took him in as his own son, yeah? And which is so odd because from what we hear from especially the Shias and from the Sunni sources, that they were not getting along at the time. So exactly. Why did he take his son in and make him his own son? And he ends up murdering Usman, the 3rd caliph, and then Ali becomes the successor. It's a bit suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit suspicious. So you never know what was the relationship like, because Abu Bakr was seen as his right-hand man too. Like Ali's right-hand man. So
and doesn't it give you the suspicion that maybe it was Ali who had Usman murdered?
You never know, because that was the accusation as well by Aisha, that he's sheltering or he's not doing anything about it.
Yeah, Muawiyah and I think Muawiyah and Aisha made the allegation against him that he's the one who murdered Usman. So it's conflict. It's non-stop conflict. But my suspicion is that Ali is the one who did this. Obviously, nobody knows for sure, but I think Ali is the one who did this because all of it is just too convenient for him.
Yeah,
I mean, the guy that goes inside, who breaks into Usman's house, that's his own, his own kid, the one that he took in. And the guards outside the house, they're also his own sons, Hassan and Hussein.
Yeah.
So it's just too convenient, all of that.
Yeah, and Hassan and Hussein were outside. Many sources allege that they were never there, but to be honest with you, Hassan and Hussein were outside guarding Usman's house too. So there was, even within family members, there's like, tussles. It's that bad that, there were lines, political lines drawn even amongst family members because all of them are from Quraysh tribes.
And just confirm this. Were Hassan and Hussein unharmed when Usman was murdered?
Yeah, they were unharmed.
They were
yeah, and what's
so the people actually broke in, even though they were guarding the place. They managed to break in, and Hassan and Hussein remained unharmed.
Yeah, and even Marwan got injured as well too. One of the Umayyads, Marwan, got injured during the conflict. But many even point the fingers towards Marwan, the father of Abdul Malik, as actually letting them in, so to speak. So there's a big mystery as who was actually responsible for Usman's murder. So was it the Umayyad clan itself? Was it, the Hashim clan? Or was it another clan? We never know. And there is a possibility. You're kind of on point. There is a very big possibility. And I'm open to that possibility.
Yeah. So next thing, and we've got it on the screen as well. I want to know about Ali's Caliphate. Like, what was that like? Because my information is that it was all full of blood and conflict, and he was never able to achieve much, even though people had been waiting for his time. Since Abu Bakr took over, he had a lot of fans. People couldn't wait until he became the caliph. But when he did become the caliph, he wasn't able to actually do much.
And there were 3 major wars too during his time. And there was even an invasion by Byzantines as well, too, that was thwarted in the seas, according to Tabari's history. I couldn't find the source of it. So that's why I didn't put it here, because I couldn't find the primary source. But I'll look for it, and I might show it next week, like if there was a Byzantine infiltration. But yeah, so Battle of Safin is the biggest battle was the Battle of Safin, which was Muawiyah versus Ali. And Muawiyah was the governor of Levant, Sham, or Syria at that time. And, Muawiyah was told to step down by Ali, but Muawiyah refused to step down because Muawiyah was installed by Umar. And during the reign of Usman as well, he continued his reign as the governor or ruler of Syria. So what happened in the battle was that in the face of defeat, Muawiyah nearly lost the battle. Muawiyah and Amr bin As, they ordered their troops to raise copies of the Quran in their spears. And Ali was in the midst of the battle saying, don't fall for this trick, but they stopped. This led to a ceasefire. And then months later, they had an arbitration, which also failed because some people wanted Muawiyah to step down. Some people wanted Ali to step down. It was a big mess. No one could come to an agreement in this conflict. So that's where, this is a big turning point in history. 657, around 657 was when this battle took place. Ali's Caliphate had just started in 656. So within a year, we had this major conflict. And then there was a party within that Ali's supporters that also broke away, called the Kharijids. And the Kharij are today's Ibadi sect. They fought the Battle of Naharawan because, they were the ones who they wanted to do the ceasefire, but then things did not go their way. And so they blamed Ali. And, this is where the conflict of Naharawan took place. And this was a bloody battle. And Ali had them practically defeated pretty easily. And I would say downright massacred. So, yeah, so these were the 3 major political happenings in Ali's time. And this was the biggest conflicts. And the Battle of Jamal in Basra, I forgot to tell you, and Ali had Aisha defeated when the camel, again, according to some, I think, history of Shia Islam, that Ali had Aisha defeated by having the legs of the camel she was riding on chopped off. And that's how...
I thought he was merciful.
Oh yeah, he had the camel's legs chopped off by Hassan. Hassan like just rode and bang, the camel's legs are chopped off. She fell down, and everything got into a mess. And they retreated.
In the middle of a battle,
yeah, it was in the middle of the battle too. And
like she's riding a camel, and like he chops the camel's legs off. She just falls on the ground helplessly.
Yeah, and then she's at least fortunately rescued by her brother Muhammad bin Abu Bakr. Because keep in mind, Muhammad bin Abu Bakr is her brother too, and he's on Ali's side, so he actually goes there and saves her. So the person she was accusing of murdering Osman is the one who saves her. So it's such a Game of Thrones kind of drama that's happening here. Very Game of Thrones. So it's more fascinating that I find that the alliances, the complex alliances, and familial relations.
This Ibadi sect, I find that interesting as well, because I've never heard of that Ibadi sect. Who do they align themselves with? Like, what imam do they follow?
I think they are the descendants of the Kharij, and they have they're more in a minority. They're the third sect aside from Sunni Shia, so they're neither Shia nor Sunni, and they're mostly in Oman. They're located in Oman, so that's the only geographical location that they have. I don't know much about the sect, but I'll try to do more research on the Ibadi sect. But I do know that they were descendants of the Kharij, that is, who were in conflict with Ali. So then we come to the assassination of Ali, that is. And, Ali, like I said, he was struck during the morning prayers in the Khufa Mosque, the Grand Mosque. And it was on the 19th of Ramadan. So, and he died of the injuries on the 21st. Now, Ibn Muljam, he was a Kharij rebel, and him alongside two other guys had made this plan. So they were trying to avenge their defeat in the Battle of Naharawan, and they were rejecting both Ali and Muawiyah. And the plan was to have all three, Ali, Muawiyah, and Amr bin As, murdered. However, the Ali plan was successful. The Muawiyah and Amr bin al-As plan was unsuccessful. So this was the original plan. We could have seen that triple header right here, but we only saw one in 661. So, this is what, I was like very surprised. Okay, this was in the plan too. So the Kharij were trying to cause more havoc.
It actually makes the situation even more strange, because then Muawiyah becomes, power hungry, and then he starts slaughtering Ali's family.
Yeah, and then he becomes, but also it becomes convenient that Muawiyah, like some allege that Muawiyah was behind this all along, the murder of Ali, that is. And
obviously that's mainly what we hear, because he's the one who gets to be the Caliph, and then he subjugates all of the Muslims who don't actually, agree that he's the Caliph. And his son also does the same thing.
Yeah, his son, and Yazid, his son, there's the Battle of Karbala, that this actually leads to the Battle of Karbala as well, which I'll cover in a future episode too, because it is a very interesting, because it leads to another civil war as well. So this causes more civil war. So civil war is just the end of the first one, the first civil war. And then the second civil war happens just because of Muawiyah and Yazid's actions. So it's an entire mess within the first century. And I think David Wood had a point here. He's like, they're busy at each other's throats. Nobody has time to write anything. So David Wood has kind of a point here.
And they're not just busy at each other's throats, they're also spreading Islam by the sword very quickly.
Very quickly.
It had already reached, way past the Middle East, gone all the way into Europe by this time.
Yeah, Europe, and we were at the French borders of Spain, France and Spain's borders, a bit far away from Paris, just a little further away.
The Battle of Karbala, where Hussein was murdered by Yazid, when did that happen exactly? Like, how long after Muhammad died does that happen?
This is around 680 CE, 680 CE. So this is
about 50 years,
about 50 years after Muhammad died. That's the agreed upon date.
It's actually less than 50 years, because Muhammad dies in 632 and this is 680.
Exactly.
So that means it's less than 50 years. So within a span of 50 years, you have all of this bloodshed, and they're spreading Islam by the sword.
Yeah, and it's not until the 690s things start to settle down. And you have Abdul Malik take over. And that's where you start seeing names of Muhammad on coins and whatnot. So, so 690. So everything's a mess until for 60, 70 years until like, you know, the time of.
And when we say that there was no history written down, that's probably because they didn't have time to write down history because they were too busy chopping each other's throats off.
Yeah. So that's why there's no like Muslim account or Arab account, so to speak, of the events. But we have outsiders writing these events down. So this is where I transition to this. Did this historical figure of Ali actually exist? So now we already discussed, like, you know, 710 CE, people start writing, and as well as Sulaim bin Qais and Ibn Ishaq, because there's no eyewitness accounts to these stories. All of these are from chains of narrations or like previous ancestors or previous parents who tell them their stories, or other people, and they have conflicting stories. So they're mainly relying on memory, and memory is not very reliable. So what I found is interesting in Robert Hoyland's book, Seeing Islam as Others Saw It, Ali is mentioned as Abu Turab, and Abu Turab is one of the titles of Ali. And this is a very interesting manuscript that I found. And this is from the Life of Maximus by George Rashidun. It says here that when Maximus saw Rome and had accepted the foul of his blasphemies, he also went down to Constantinople at the time when Muawiyah made peace with Emperor Constantine, having started a war with Abu Turab, the Amir of Hira, at Safin, and defeated him. So Ali here is mentioned as Abu Turab. Ali, the word Ali is not mentioned, but Abu Turab is mentioned, the title. And he's seen as the Amir of Hira, or the king of Hira. The Hira region is where Khufa is located, Khufa in Iraq. So that region itself was the Hira region. And it was also, Hira was, I think Jay Smith pointed out, it was one of the, actually I saw it in history, it was one of the centers of Christianity in Iraq at that time. So the Amir of Hira, he's defeated at Safin. So this kind of shows a different picture, because there is a Muawiyah's defeat and a ceasefire. However, this shows a different story where he started a war with Abu Turab and actually defeated him at Safin. So this tells an opposite story. Now, this is the a biography by George Rashidun. It's from the late 7th, early 8th century, so 700s, I would say, early 700s. And this is from the Syriac life of Maximus the Confessor. And Maximus the Confessor was a bishop. He lived between 580 and 662. So he met, he went to Constantinople. And this was where Muawiyah, during that time, was, had made peace with the emperor. And Muawiyah had tried to conquer Constantinople, and he failed. So they had to agree to a ceasefire from there. So it's interesting. This might be a historical account, but we'll discuss here. So Robert Hoyland's analysis here is like, he says Abu Turab is the nickname of Ali bin Abu Talib. And its appearance here suggests a derivation from an Arab informant. In most Muslim accounts of the Battle of Safin, led only to an agreement between Muawiyah and Ali to seek arbitration of their dispute. Ali's defeat came later. The casual mention here that Safin was where Muawiyah defeated Abu Turab may be a telescoping of events, but there are hints on the Christian and Muslim side that it is right. Finally, there's an observation that Ali was the Amir of Hira. On the classical Muslim accounts, he is the fourth legitimate ruler of the Arabs, though early Syrian sources of Christian and Muslim, Syrian sources portray him as a rebel. So there's a little deviation from the Islamic account that Ali is seen as a rebel. So they portray him more as a rebel rather than, and he's a rebel leader with only support from the East. Moreover, he's usually connected with Khufa rather than Hira, though the two were close enough for confusion or identification to be possible. But I would say Hira, that's like the general bigger area of Al-Hira, that is. So Khufa was his capital. So there might be, Abu Turab might have existed, this person, Abu Turab, and he was a rebel or a person who claimed also caliphate as well. And this was where there was the divide started. Muawiyah and Ali was where the, who's the rightful caliph, that is. But keep in mind, this is written from the Syrian perspective. We're not getting the Iraqi perspective. So the Syrians probably see the Iraqis as rebels, so to speak, from a historical standpoint. So this I found very interesting mention of Ali in early historical documents. And there's another one that I found. This is from the Apologies and Disputation as a letter in the late 8th and early 9th century. So this talks about the Quran itself. This talks about the Quran being tampered with. So it's called Furqan or Furqan. Furqan is another word for Quran. So I'll read this out for you guys. It was Umar, Abu Turab, and Salman the Persian who composed that, the Furqan, even though the rumor has got around among you that God sent it down from the heavens. As for your book, you've already given us examples of such falsification, and one knows among others of a certain Hajjaj, named by you as a governor of Persia, who had men gather your ancient books, which he replaced by others composed by himself according to his taste, and which he disseminated everywhere in your nation, because it was easier by far to undertake such a task among people speaking a single language. For this destruction, nevertheless, there escaped a few works of Abu Turab, for Hajjaj could not make them disappear completely. So it's talking about the Qur'ans, like Hajjaj bin Yusuf, the ruler of Persia, governor of Persia under Abdul Malik at this time, and Marwan as well. Marwan and Abdul Malik bin Marwan. Like Hajjaj was the famous general, and he had many of the copies of the Quran burnt as well. This is something that's ignored by a lot of people. They know of Usman, but they don't necessarily talk about Hajjaj bin Yusuf. And Hajjaj had these changes. That is, yes, you were saying you wanted to say something, Zaid?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that this information here, it very much sounds like someone, whoever the writer of this is sure, like crystal clear that there is a serious problem with the Quran here.
Yeah.
And this is new information aside from all of the other information we've got, which comes from Ubay bin Ka'b and all of those guys, which were first-hand scribes of Muhammad. We've also got this now, which suggests that the Quran has been tampered with.
Yeah, and you have writers like Umar, Abu Turab, as well as Salman the Persian as well, who compiled the Quran itself. And what's funny is that there escaped a few works of Abu Turab. So either was it I can kind of see these are either the sermons or letters or works by him, or it could be his copies or manuscripts of the Quran as well. That's why we see like derivations of the early Quran copies, that is. Whenever we see an ancient Quran copy, there's a derivation, or there's entire sentences that are different. So this kind of, opens the gap to see, okay, this might have happened. And mind you, even though this is from the late 8th and early 9th century, this the Christian letter Leo he's actually calling out the Quran for being problematic, and how it's tampered with.
Yeah, and even today we can look at two different Qurans from two different places, in the world, and we would see that some words are different, some words are not in the right place, and they actually do change the meaning of the sentence.
Exactly, and it changes like the entire meaning changes. But they say,
and what about? Yeah, we also do know that at some point in history they kind of put those, like I don't know the English word for them.
The vowels?
Yeah, something like
critical markings.
Yeah,
the markings. Yes, so they put
the markings to make the sounds more clear for the non-Arabs, because the Arabs were able to understand it without those, but the non-Arabs, they needed it. So they put those on at some point, and those really made a big mess, because not everybody received the same version of those. So as those manuscripts spread out across the world, it was a big mess, and it stayed that way for a long time, until somewhere in the 20th century, the Saudi governor or something, he realized that we've got this big problem, like in parts of the world there are different Qurans. So he kind of ordered all of them back, kind of like Usman did back in his caliphate.
Yeah.
And he kind of standardized one version and he sent them back out again.
Because the Hafs version has become standardized internationally, but whereas we have the Warsh as well as the other versions that are still
this did happen, right, in the 20th century.
Oh yes, this happened. I think in the early 20th, mid-early 20th century.
1918.
1918. Wow.
And it was printed in Cairo in 1924, and then the codification itself only took place in 1985.
Wow.
Right. Wow. Was it the Saudi king who did this?
No, it was Al-Azhar.
Oh, Jamia Al-Azhar?
No, the university in Cairo.
Oh, the Al-Azhar University.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had
a group of scholars who came together and decided that they were going to take the Hafs version as recited by Al-Amr, and this is what they just decided. It was arbitrarily decided, and they took one of the worst versions available.
Yeah.
But
what did they do with the other version? What did they do with the other?
Let me just take you back in time a little bit, because something like 8 years ago, Kling and I, we tried to make sense of all of this, and we built a bit of an alternate universe here. What we showed is that none of the stuff was available before the 8th century. And then it was only Marwan who came up with the final version, the idea of Islam. And then it was the Abbasids who actually went and compiled some stuff. They took stories that were existent. They were Christian texts, and then they modified them. They inserted Allah. You can still see these old manuscripts because Dan Brubaker, he showed where there were texts where they inserted Allah every second sentence, to give it this Arabic tilt. And then we see what actually happened, how they positioned the figures, how they needed Ali to be there as the adopted son, who was then de-adopted through the Quran to establish Muhammad as the sole Caliph. And how political, this is why I asked you whether you're going to go into the politics, how he was positioned as a political figure, who was then taken as a aggressor. And then Muawiyah went and got another tribe because he didn't want to get his fingers dirty. So what the historians did is they said Muawiyah then got a different tribe to go and assassinate him, and they made it a personal issue. And this is how history got compiled around some figures, because Ali itself, the same as Muhammad, the same as Abu Bakr and all these people, they didn't really exist. These are all figures that were created by those people to fit into a story, to give a narrative, and to give the standard Islamic narrative that we see today, the way that it was compiled like 100, 200 years later, because we're talking about the 8th, 9th century, exactly was what Zain was just talking about. This is when everything happened. And that's when the Quran came about. That is why we see all the versions of the Quran that we have, sometimes with 105, sometimes with 120 chapters. They're all different. And this is why we see all the differences coming around, all the different reciters, how they were suddenly being taught by different people to recite different versions of the Quran, because we don't have a single proto-Quran. So the whole thing is just a historic and political thing, how they went from a Christian origin down to an Arabic one, and then positioned the figures in a political way, because it's always the winners who dictate the history, and
Zaid,
they wrote it like that.
Yeah, and Zaid has a question for you, Stops.
Yeah, sure.
My question is that when you say that these figures are not historical, rather they're just mythical figures, and instead, all of the stuff that happened afterwards, they kind of, in order to make sense of all of that, they kind of made all of these figures up and fit all of these narratives onto those figures. How then would you say that they were able to connect all of those figures with each other? Like, because when you read the whole story, Muhammad and his dad's name is, and this is his uncle, and his uncle's son is Ali. Those are his children. Ali gets to marry Muhammad's daughter, and then you've got Abu Bakr, you've got Umar, you've got all of their, their entire family, you've got their family trees. And, all of the historical lineage, it's all available in those stories, which according to you are made up. So how are they able to create such detailed stories when they weren't actually real?
Exactly like you said.
Same way they used to create Star Wars.
Yeah, you can actually create
Star Wars. Wait. Star Wars writers are very creative. They are actually paid to make up stories, so they can do that. They're good at that. How are those ancient Arabs so creative?
But keep in mind,
the way that it worked is what they did is they were able to look back in history. So the same way as they were able when they created Jesus, they also had some cornerstones. So they had Bethlehem, and they had some things which they could weave around, and there probably was a figure or two figure or maybe even 5 figures called Jesus, or maybe not, who were just some charismatic preachers who were wandering around the countryside, and they took the elements of those people, and from these they created the figurehead, Jesus. The same thing they did with Muhammad, also the praised one, same as Jesus. So they took, I don't know if you're aware that there were 5 different prophets running around, well-known prophets at the time, who were running around. And this is why, for example, you get the one, because you have the Jacobi doctrine, you have Eusebius, you have all these people talking about these things. And the one, and this is a telltale sign, he was talking about the keys to heaven. Now, there was another prophet at the time who went around claiming that he had the keys to heaven. So what they did, and you can see how this works, how they took the different characters and sort of created them, not in a void, but in a historical context, so that over time they blended in with reality. So they also had their cornerstones. They had to invent Mecca, which didn't exist at the time. But Yathrib, Medina, did exist. So did Jerusalem. But these are only mentioned at a later stage, when they start merging these created figures with real figures. So this was a very clever thing, because in Star Wars, you stay in the realm of fantasy all the time. Whereas here, and this is the problem that Kling and I had, when does it start becoming real? And there it was very cleverly done, because Muawiyah is the first one which starts to have some sort of documentation, and how everything then comes that it matches the things that we actually do know, which are documented.
When does the fourth wall start breaking? When do they start breaking the fourth wall?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And Stops was just saying, when does it stop and when does it start? Like the fiction and reality. Where do we draw the line?
And
that's very difficult. We could never work that out.
Yeah, and Mecca, I think Zed, you were saying Mecca didn't exist until the 740s. That is, on the maps. That is, it was never.
Yeah, 741 exactly.
Yeah, and Yathrib, the city, or Medina or Modina by the Chinese that they called it, did exist on the map. So Modina was there, Taif was there. These actual cities were there, and even cities like Khufa as well as Damascus. So you can kind of put a fictional city and still work around it. And, it's like a half truth, half falsehood, but you repeat it many times that it becomes
exactly. But it was well done. It was cleverly done.
Yeah, and this reminds me of a story where I think it's the Battle of Uhud, the second battle during, Muhammad's life, where I think the Kafirs kind of come back at the Muslims to kind of avenge the Battle of Badr. Yeah. And what happens is that a good friend of Muhammad, Hamza, he ends up getting murdered, brutally murdered. And someone, a woman named Hinda, who was the wife of Abu Sufyan, I think, and she kind of breaks off his ears, and his nose, and breaks off parts of his skin, and she puts them in her mouth and chews them. And this kind of reminds me that it's just one of those things. The story is so detailed, and that's what kind of gives me the impression that it has to be real. But like you said, some of it probably is real, and some of it is probably made up.
And I think I recall Stops saying that incidents like this might have happened, but they were attributed to certain people, like lumped onto Muhammad, lumped onto Ali, lumped onto Muawiyah even. So incidents like this happened, but every character got a detailed story. And there are even, fictional accounts of real characters that people to this day accept as real, like Anarkali never existed, for example, but people think she's a historical figure.
I think that. So she's not real.
Yeah, so she was never real to begin with. So she's just a fictional character. So
then why was she made up? Like what do you think
this
the goal
is for story, entertainment, because British writers, when they went to India, they were fascinated by so Jahangir and Noor Jahan told them stories. They collected oral stories about the king's palace, for entertainment purposes. And and from that, a Pakistani writer from those early sources, he's like, okay, I can make up this interesting character, Anarkali. And then he kind of jumbled up the stories, used real characters like Akbar and Salim, which is Jahangir, and created the story. It was a play.
Yeah, but it's not something that is impossible. Like, it's not something strange, because a king's son can easily fall in love with a girl if she's pretty.
Even Shakespeare's plays, you can see Julius Caesar. There's a fictionalized account that he says, "Oh, you too," but he actually, there's no account of him saying anything to Brutus at all. So something similar happened here as well. And in those times, accounts were, and accounts are written like 100, 150 years after. So, which makes it weird. But I have something interesting. I know we get into that, but I have something interesting about the Shrine of Khufa. So the Shrine of Khufa, or Najaf, I looked into Dan Gibson. You remember Dan Gibson's theory that the mosques pointed to Petra, correct? You guys remember that?
Yep.
Is it related to Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ?
No. It's not Mel, but it's related to Petra in Jerusalem, actually. So Ali's shrine. Actually, I'm gonna open this link and share this link. Share the screen for this. So, hang on. Let me just share the screen. Come on.
His shrine is in Khufa, in Iraq. What was he doing?
Send me the link. I can share it.
Yeah. 1 second. So I'll stop sharing this, and I'll share this tab instead. Share a screen and tab in the Qibla tool. So he has a Qibla tool on his website. So now I look for the Petra Mosques. That is the Petra Mosques, and there is by age. Actually, let me search by age. Can you see this, by the way?
Yes.
Abbasid. And then there is where is the Shrine of Ali? So
I would call that an unholy mess.
Yeah, I know, right? With the where is that shrine? Malik Mosque. There is it is Abbasid. So Mosque of Mansour, Ali Shrine. There we go. Now, Ali Shrine, I clicked on it. It says it's in the category of Petra. Right here, Ali's Shrine. This is the one in Najaf. So I'll move the map here, and it'll kind of squeeze out a bit. So the Qibla for Ali's Shrine, see the blue line here? It's, even though it's Petra is here, it's pointing to Jerusalem as well. So it's right in the middle of Jerusalem. So I was thinking, and it was built around 786 during the time of Harun al-Rashid. He was the Abbasid Caliph.
Yeah.
So it's like, why is it facing Jerusalem? Which concerned me, because Dan initially put this in the Jerusalem category, but he says, no, it's kind of in the middle of Jerusalem and Petra. So I kind of find it closer to Jerusalem. So it's like one of these three mosques that face Jerusalem, which baffled me, But what do you guys think? Why is it like, in the pointing to Jerusalem, this shrine?
Well, why should there be a significance that they are pointing towards something? I mean, we're on a sphere anyway, so you can't point towards anything anyway. So I think people are making far too much of this, and that this, I mean, we know it was invented much later because, you had to wait another 300-400 years before there was some sort of consensus where to go and where the Qibla was going to go. I think in the beginning it was just arbitrary.
Yeah, I think that may have been the case, but it could have also been like, there might be some truth to the Jerusalem account as well, at least, and to the Petra account.
Yeah, but hang on. If you look at what it says on the Dome of the Rock, for example,
Yeah.
this is all Christian stuff.
Yeah.
So, if you look at the because I know that Dr. J. Smith, he's now doing the series, and I think it's quite interesting what he's doing. I mean, of course, he's still proselytizing and still trying to get the Christian glasses view. But if you take that out and you filter it and keep the facts, it's quite interesting, because what he is saying and the facts that he's bringing up are facts. It doesn't matter who brings them up. It is like that Muhammad, the praised one, is there, and he was going to be a substitute for Jesus.
Yeah.
And if you go through all the texts, it's quite obvious. If you go through what it says on the shrine of the Dome of the Rock, it's quite obvious.
Yeah.
So for them, it was of utmost importance, because they were trying to create the Arabic version of Christianity, combining it with Judaism, because they thought, they were under the impression, and you see this with Ezra being the son of the Jewish God and things like that. They actually thought that Christianity was the fulfillment of Judaism. And because they got so many things wrong, and this is one of them. And this is why I think they went for Jerusalem, because they took it as being the center for both Christianity and Judaism. And that's why they focused on this. It was quite logical, I think.
And even keep in mind, like Al-Hira and Kufa were the locations where, you had Ali's, not only Ali's shrine, but it was a center of Christianity during that time. So kind of, like, I think you have a point. You have a pretty good point there, where, it's probably combining elements of Judaism and Christianity together.
Well, that's what we see in the Quran all the time. People of the book all the time.
Yeah. And now we come to artistic.
Oh shit!
Ali.
What am I doing there?
Hi, Scops. Hello, Scops. And
that is so funny.
I hear Scops' voice, I always imagine this painting, because I'm so used to Scops' original, avatar, that whenever he puts another thing, I'm like, I miss the old one. I miss the Ali.
Yeah, I use it for many years.
Yeah.
Actually, if I want to, I can show you my new one.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that this depiction is very, yes, I like this one, the scientist one that you have.
The crazy one, yeah.
Yes. But I still I have this nostalgic attachment to this one, out of nostalgia. Because keep in mind, this is also a painting of Ali, so it kind of blends the two characters of Stop Spamming and Ali Bin Abu Talib together. So, but you'll find these paintings in mosques and imam bargas in Shia mosques of Pakistan, as well as in Iraq and Iran. And I found these paintings there. So these are quite common paintings in the Shia world, at least. So, depictions of Ali is, quite common. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Dante's Inferno. So Dante mentions Ali and Muhammad simultaneously. So this shows he actually has, in the 9th chasm of the 8th circle of hell, they're the sowers of discord, whose punishment is to be mutilated. Muhammad shows his entrails to Dante and Virgil, while on the left, and he sees his son Ali, his head cleft from the chin to the forelock, and a winged devil with a sword stands on the right in the distance behind Muhammad. Can be seen Bertrand de Born carrying his head on his hand. So Muhammad and Ali are in this, the 8th circle, and the 9th, so this is the depiction that I found. So you have Ali here as this child, or young man, Muhammad showing his body parts being cut open, and then you have Virgil and Dante standing here, and then you have the winged devil or demon that's standing, the winged demon. So this was a depiction that I actually recently discovered, that Dante's Inferno, how they saw Muslims, so to speak. They saw only Muslims not as heretics, but they saw them as sowers of discord, so to speak. So this might be something interesting, that they might have seen them as a form of Christians, but, they might have seen them not as very different, but different enough to be put into hell. And he picks two of the most figures, two figures, Muhammad and Ali specifically. So which I found very interesting. But what do you guys think of this this depiction of Ali?
This is amazing.
I know,
I've
right?
never seen. I've never come across this. This is an amazing. This is a very good find.
Yeah, and it's in Dante's poem as well too. Like I can send I'll send you guys the link in the chat. Actually, let me just copy this link. Copy link address.
And do you know that this codified the Italian language, just the way that Quran codified Arabic?
Yeah, and you have a mention of these two Islamic figures in this manner, like they're seen in hell, so to speak. So it's very funny. He shows Muhammad and Ali specifically, not any of their companions, specifically Muhammad and Ali.
Let me just quickly add that in Sunni Islam, all of these depictions are totally haram.
Oh, definitely.
Like, it's a big time taboo.
Well,
if you do this,
today, yes, but they didn't used to be.
What do you mean today? Yeah. Like, were they not before?
Yeah, so we are committing a sin here by showing Ali and Muhammad not only naked but in hell.
Yeah, but initially they didn't have this. Okay, this is something that has come up with the Ottomans. This was introduced much later because they used to have a lot of pictures in the beginning.
Yeah, and they have a lot of paintings of Muhammad and his companions in walls and of mosques and whatnot. And so now I'm kind of like bringing the close to the presentation and random hadith. So instead of hadith of the week, I'm bringing some random hadith by Sunnah ibn Majah, narrated by Ali himself. So this is focusing on Ali. The Messenger of Allah forbade on the day of Khaybar the temporary marriage of women, which is the muta, and he forbade the flesh of domestic donkeys. And I thought,
why on the day of Khaybar did he remember that?
I don't know.
The temporary marriage of women, the muta, and he forbade the flesh of domestic donkeys.
Yeah, of all things.
You feel like eating the flesh, yeah?
Yeah, eating the flesh of domestic donkeys. I'm like, why domestic donkeys of all things?
Well, yeah, I've heard of the muta being a Shia thing, but never the donkeys.
Yeah, never the donkeys.
If we are to believe this hadith, we know two things. The first thing we know is that the Muslims were doing muta at the time, and the other thing that they were eating the flesh of domestic donkeys at the time.
Yeah.
And somehow, on the day of a very bloody battle, where Muslims won because they, basically stabbed their opponents in the back, after winning, Muhammad said, from now on, you can't marry women temporarily, and you can't eat the flesh of domestic donkeys.
Yeah.
And on this day,
Doorknob, you need to stop this, really. You've always got me falling off my chair. This is crazy what you're doing.
Hot for oh my god, hot for Tokyo, Lovik.
But he's doing this all the time. Look at the fool-philism. I mean, it's crazy. I'm sitting here giggling hysterically. I have to pull myself together because he goes over these things.
This is amazing. Stops, Doorknob, keep doing it. We need Stops laughing. He has a.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, and on this day, Muhammad was poisoned as well, right?
I think it was either on this day or after. One of the women poisoned.
Yeah, he had a busy few days that we know.
Yeah, it was quite a few busy days. So,
had a lot on his plate. Literally.
Yeah, literally a lot on his plate.
Yeah, the only thing that wasn't on his plate was the 7 dates that could have cured him from the poison.
Yeah, he didn't have the 7 dates. He forgot the 7 dates, unfortunately.
Yeah. But a lot of other things were though.
Yeah. And then we have the Tirmidhi Hadith 3915 that the Messenger of Allah said, whatever is between my house and my mimbar is a garden from the gardens of paradise. I was like, wait, what? And again, this is narrated by Ali. It's like, did Muhammad actually own a garden of paradise, or is it symbolic? Like, which one is it? So is paradise on earth? So this is a very strange hadith from Tirmidhi, and these are Sahih hadiths too. Like both of these are Sahih, so to speak. So it's not, that they're dhaif or Maudu. These are Sahih hadiths. And I actually picked 3 more hadiths narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah. Muhammad said to Ali in Tirmidhi 3731, You are to me in the position that Harun was to Musa, except that there is no prophet after me. So Muhammad is here in this hadith stating that Ali is like his spiritual successor, like, he's like Aaron or Harun was to Musa, except Ali's not the prophet. So Ali was seen as like very close to Muhammad, even by the hadith writers. And then Tirmidhi, in another book, 3713 or book 49, he said, Muhammad said, from whomever Mawla, I am his Mawla, then Ali is his Mawla. And Mawla in Islam means guardian, having authority over the believers, or a leader. So this is what the meaning of a Mawla is in Islam. So, so now I think this is the end of the presentation. Thank you, guys. But yes, do we have any points to discuss and further questions, that is?
Yeah, on that last point, I just want to quickly say, whoever is whoever I am the Mawla for, Ali is the Mawla for that person as well, yeah?
Yeah.
This is a Sahih Hadith, yes?
Yes, this is a Sahih Hadith.
Yeah, and it's not just Sahih, it's a Sahih Mutawatir Hadith where it's the highest rank of a Sahih Hadith.
Yes, it's the highest rank too.
Why then do the Sunni Muslims have a problem when the Shia Muslims say that Ali is a Mawla?
I don't know, because it's written in the Sunni books as well. So it's kind of like, at least the
This
Shia
is a Sunni book.
are consistent with the Hadith. They're at least consistent.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
So why do the Sunni Muslims have a problem with that? Why do they say, well, it's wrong to call anyone a Mawla except Allah himself? When Muhammad himself said that I'm a Mawla and Ali is a Mawla too.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, I think they're trying to push away. They kind of see this as a form of polytheism, and they want to distance themselves to this new, I think. And also, Sunnis, yes, Miles, you have a good point. This confirms Ali's successorship as the Caliph when Muhammad died. So this kind of confirms that Ali was indeed the rightful Caliph as per the narrative. That is, as per the narrative. So
yeah, Muhammad didn't directly say that Ali is going to be the successor, but he kind of hinted toward that. It's a very strong hint that he wanted Ali to be the successor.
It is quite a strong point too. And this hadith is never discussed.
It's just one of those things that hadiths are always subjective. Like, you can interpret them any way you like. They just give you like signs and signals, but they don't actually tell you what to do. And this is just one of those things. And look what it did to the Imam.
Yeah, and it's one major issue, right? Like, it's not like everyone there is Air Force pilots. Like, why give signals in such Morse code?
Yeah, and it's, if anything, this issue to this day has affected the Muslim community so bad it has caused division.
Only 2 days ago, there was a huge bombing in Afghanistan at a Shia mosque.
Yeah, it was the Mazar Sharif too, like near the mosque where this was the second alleged shrine of Ali. And yes, welcome drastic measures. How are you doing today?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Hope everyone else is. I'm sorry I'm late, but I got held up with real life. So yeah, I'm good.
No you problem. Don't have a life. Come on.
I do. It's scary. It's just that it doesn't happen often, so I forget for most of it, and then occasionally it pops up, and I'm like, oh yeah, shit, I do stuff that's not on the internet.
So yeah, were you able to watch the presentation, like the discussion about Ali?
Cool.
So
no, this was beautiful. This was really, really good stuff, and I love how thorough you are. Really, how you go and you shine the light in all sorts of corners. And I like that you're doing this, whether it's pro or con or whatever. You don't care. You just go ahead and do it. Love it. I love that attitude. Very nice. I'm really happy with the thoroughness that you're bringing here. This is really, really nice. I'm speechless.
Yeah. No. Thank you. But yeah, it's I tried. I didn't go too much into detail of Najul Balagha, the text itself. I only covered the history behind it, as well as it was a
the essentials,
500 compilation history of itself, and also the Quran as well. So we kind of discussed the Quran, being tampered with, as well as the political situation. And I like what you brought up too, with the characters that were fitted together to kind of like make sense of the narrative, because there is no we call it, nothing was written for like 100, 200 years. So this was, so thank you Stops for so much for contributing. Thank you Zainab. By the way, do you guys have any other questions, points of discussions, or anything like that?
One or two, yeah, I do.
Yes, you speak away.
Is Ali a good Muslim or not? What do you think?
Now, this is an interesting one, because according to the Kharij, he was actually not a good Muslim, or because he was told to actually step down as a disbeliever according to the narrative. Say that he's a non-believer, or condemn the. He had some weird choices in between, and yes, Dude Abide says define a good Muslim, because Ali has sort of at times dissuaded from the what Muhammad said, but he also agreed with it, but he also showed loyalty to Muhammad to the very end. But also at the same time, he's quite a controversial figure, because he's consistent and not consistent at the same time. He's kind of like this weird, complex character that I find.
And there's also a very famous narrative about him that he's really strong, like he's like an alpha male.
Yeah. He's quite strong.
And I heard this story, like about the Battle of Khaybar, which we discussed as well in the presentation.
Yeah, that he breaks the door off its hinges and enters the what do you call it? He picks it up like he does a gorilla press, and he throws it on the side, and he lets everybody inside the walls of Khaybar.
Yeah, and that's not even a disputed matter. But here's another story that I've heard, a less known one, that when he killed Marhab, the leader of Khaybar, he picked his sword up, high in the air. He lifted his sword up and he cut Marhab right in half. Yeah, and when his sword cut Marhab through Marhab, and when it was about to touch the ground, the angel Gabriel came and put his hand there under the sword to stop the sword from hitting the ground. And some people believe that if the angel Gabriel had not done that, then the sword would have ripped through the earth and made a hole in the earth.
What?
That's how strong Ali was.
What? That's funny.
I don't know this story, but this is a story that some people actually believe.
Yeah, I think it's an oral story, because keep in mind, I think I stated earlier, people believe Ali was the one who killed Marhab, but it's actually someone else in Ibn Ishaq's account. This is actually a misconception that Ali killed him. No, Ali only killed Amr bin Abdul Wad in the Battle of the Trench. But in Khaybar, all he did was, break the door off the hinges and march forward. And he was also the main executioner of the Jews, but he never killed Marhab. Marhab was defeated by another man, according to Ibn Ishaq. But other accounts state it was Ali. So the earliest account states it's someone else, another companion.
Yeah, well, usually it is believed that Ali is the one who killed Marhab, and that's what he's praised for. They really shout praises on him. Yeah, and that's where this story comes from about him, that if the angel Gabriel had not put his hand there under the sword and stopped it from hitting the ground, then the sword would have made a hole in the ground. That's how strong Ali was.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where there's another story, an oral story, and Stops, you love listening to this, where Abu Bakr had actually planned the assassination of Ali during after prayers or something like that, and he had second thoughts, and he hired Khalid bin Walid to have him assassinated, one of the best generals. So Khalid was actually waiting, but then Abu Bakr actually said, he said loudly, Khalid, whatever you've been sent to do, do not do it. So Ali realized what it was, and he went up to Khalid. He grabbed Khalid by the throat, and he actually squeezed his throat and lifted him up in the air. And Khalid and Omar were like begging him, like, please stop, because Ali had Khalid in his hand. So that's how strong Ali was seen as. So that's another oral story that I heard. And Ali threw him on the ground and let him go. And he said, this is the man you sent to kill me? Send someone better. And he just walked away. This is a very funny story and very...
Ali being really strong, I find this highly in contradiction with something else that Shia Muslims believe, which is that the second Caliph, Umar, he murdered his wife, Fatma, who was the daughter of the Prophet. and she also was pregnant, so she had his unborn child in her belly, right?
According to
And Umar struck her right on the belly, and the child died, and she had a miscarriage. And after 3 months, she died as well. And this is a really famous story. Like the Shia Muslims actually believe this story. That's their main problem with Umar. That's why they hate him.
This is from Sulaim bin Qais, the first account to narrate this story. And in Sulaim bin Qais's book, apparently when Fatima just was holding the door, Umar had kicked the door open. So Umar didn't know it was Fatima was behind it, but because the door's pressure caused a miscarriage. And the miscarriage was the reason why she died. So Umar and a bunch of thugs, like a group of thugs, gathered around Ali and dragged him out. Like they tied him up, they dragged him out because there's multiple men dragging him out. So it's like, so they knew that this was like, because he was a strong man, they needed multiple guys to like, have him overpower him, so to speak.
Right. But okay, fine. He got overpowered by multiple men on that occasion when his wife was beaten and his unborn child was murdered. He was not able to do anything because he was overpowered by a lot of people. But why then did he pledge allegiance to the caliphs?
He didn't.
The very same caliphs that murdered his wife. Why would he
do
that?
He didn't. He actually gave a half-assed one, as I mentioned earlier, because in the Sulaim bin Qais account, and I will discuss this in a future video because I don't have the full account with me, but I do recall that he gave his fist instead of his hand. So when you give an open hand, that's an allegiance. But he gave Abu Bakr a closed fist because his children were crying. So,
it's funny, isn't it? The way they rationalize stuff.
Yeah. And the Abu Bakr was like, please, Omar, I think we need to stop this. Like, because Abu Bakr was a little softer by heart. So Abu Bakr's like, okay, and Omar was like, I don't accept the fist. And Abu Bakr was like, no, I'm happy with the fist. It's okay. Let's just leave him alone. Let's just leave him alone.
Yeah.
So,
and does this happen 6 months after?
Yeah, it happens like just after, like, I think it's within the 6 months of, the Prophet's death. And not only that, they even reject Ali's version of the Quran itself. Like Ali puts forth his version of the Quran compilation. They reject him and they accept Zayd bin Sabit's version of the Quran.
Yeah, well, a good Shia friend of mine has told me that Ali did not pledge allegiance with Abu Bakr for 6 months because he had a major grievance with him.
Yeah. And, there is a dispute whether there was an allegiance or not. And, it's a very strange historical account because this kind of book shows holes, doesn't it? It shows holes into the historical account.
Holes and contradictions over and over again.
Exactly. So it shows the strength may have been exaggerated because keep in mind, you have people trying to, people actually orally passed on these legends of Ali becoming this hero because he was the standard of the warriors, right? So you kind of have to make up like supernatural claims.
And for some people, he's on God level, like he's almost a mythical character. He's just too amazing.
Almost like Superman, if you can say, like almost like Superman level strength or something.
I was just thinking that because the story with the sword I find fascinating. So it's like having Excalibur, like a couple of hundred years early.
Yeah, and even the Zulfiqar, the sword itself, is seen as kind of an Excalibur itself too, where only Ali was the one who was able to wield that sword. And no one else.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a repetition, eh?
Yeah.
So the myths are being refurnished or some refurbished or
no. Wait. King Arthur was a Muslim. Didn't you know that?
It was Neil Armstrong, the man who stepped on the moon.
King Arthur was a Muslim.
Oh boy, he was a Muslim living in Britain at the time before Muhammad was born. Just to make it
clear. He was corrupted by the Jinn Merlin.
Yeah, and Neil Armstrong heard the azan on the moon as well. Don't forget that.
Yeah. He heard the azan. So definitely, we have to add.
And he converted to Shia Islam. Don't you forget that either.
Oh yes, don't forget not Sunni Islam, Shia Islam, which has 3 different sects altogether of its own. Which Shia Islam? God knows.
But for me, it's fascinating to see how all these stories are sort of repeated in history in different areas, in different regions, in different eras, in different everything. But they are so similar. It's amazing how these things sort of stick in the minds of people and how people are fascinated by them over and over again. It doesn't matter when. It's only today when we look at these things and we think, oh, yeah, okay, we've had it.
Oh, stop. There's two more stories I have. And Zayd might know these. Basically, there's a story of Ali when he was born. I heard this oral story. He killed 2 snakes, just like Hercules.
It rings a bell. Yeah.
Child prodigy.
Yeah.
But
with
you
a
have
stone.
a lot of, wasn't there some story between Ali and Aisha as well, where he was sort of full of contempt for her or something?
Yes. There's Ali was the one who brought the accusation that Aisha was having an affair with I forgot to include that. Damn, that was what I wanted to include.
Aisha, was the general.
Yes.
The dude's name.
Yeah. So Ali.
Safin.
No. Talhah. Talhah was the one who was having an affair with Aisha, and Ali was the one who actually, and Salman the Persian were the ones who pointed her fingers at her, that she spent the night with this man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Safin. Was it Safin?
No. It was Ali. Ali was the one. And
no, the one she had an affair with.
No, the one she had an affair with.
The person she allegedly had an affair with.
Talhah. Talhah was the one who she had an affair with.
I was under the impression that it was Safwan, but okay, it might have been Talhah.
Yeah. And if anything, Talhah wanted to marry. It was known that Talhah wanted to marry Muhammad's wife Aisha after he died. That's where the verse came, like, you can't marry any of my wives after I die. That's where the Quranic verse comes from. That's one of the reasons. And another reason
I was going to marry Aisha. Shit.
Yeah. And Talhah,
sad about that too.
And there's another story where Aisha, the reason the Quran verse came was Muhammad was covering up for Aisha's alleged adultery or having an affair with Talhah. So that was, she's relieved of that innocence. I've got that Quran verse. Damn. And
how would that help? I don't get it. But I bet Aisha was sad when she heard that verse.
Yeah, she was sad.
Marry wives after I'm gone.
Yeah, and I don't know why that was relevant, because it's like now it's 1400 years. It's not relevant anymore. Like they're dead, so I don't want to marry a dead woman. So it's bizarre.
Yeah, but remember that Muhammad thought that the end days were coming within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, 100 years actually, within 100 years or a couple of weeks.
No, he said the little boy that was sitting next to him got to see the old age before the days will come.
Yes, that hadith. Yes, I remember that hadith. And the boy won't grow old. And wouldn't you know it, that boy is nowhere to be seen, nowhere, just vanishes.
Maybe the boy was a jinn. I
don't know if the boy was a jinn. There was there was a boy who was a Dajjal as well. Like I discussed in one of Stock's shows as well, that he was one of the prophets, alleged prophets, was a little boy who Muhammad labeled as Dajjal. So crap, I forgot his name too. I'll do another episode on that boy. It's very interesting, very fascinating, that fun. Even Yasser Qazi did a speech on that boy, and he's like, this is probably the Dajjal. Allah knows best. Allah knows best. And I was like, really?
Come up with dog shit, and in the end, remember to say that Allah knows best, and everything's good.
Yeah, it's so...
That's the red line.
Yeah, and Yasser Qadi, one of the biggest scholars, is admitting to this. Like, oh my goodness, this is so bizarre. Boy,
and Yasser Qadi is our hero, because he was the one who said there are holes in the narrative, remember?
Yeah, he's the one.
More of them every day by the sounds of it.
Yeah. And
there are holes in the narrative, folks. Holes in the narrative.
There are holes. And we kind of saw, even with this presentation about Ali bin Abu Talib, he kind of presents the holes in the narrative from even Robert Hoyland's perspective. We talked about the Doctrina Jacobi. We talked about even the contradictions, like Ali, the strong guy, but then, he got overpowered, blah, blah, blah. And then Ali becoming Caliph, and then, there's a dispute, and he causes this big dispute amongst the entire community. So this was and Usman's murder as well.
Yeah, my last word would be that Ali is a very interesting character. And at times he does contradict himself. Like, sometimes he's on one kind of person, and another time he's a different kind of person.
Yeah, he definitely is. A very complex. He could make a very good DC character. I could 100% vouch for him to become a DC character, a complex anti-hero or something like that. Stops. What do you think of Ali? Your final words on Ali, aka yourself.
I just think he makes a perfect avatar.
Yeah, he makes this amazing avatar.
No, come on. I mean, all these guys, they have exactly, this is what Zain said, it's ups and downs. They have positives, they have negatives. The guy is super strong. He goes and fights great wars and all sorts of things, but then he gets outsmarted, outwitted, and eventually he gets killed for being a hero. Now, for me, what is fascinating is to see the context. For me, it's fascinating is to see why would somebody like that be created? What is his function? What is the message that he is what he's supposed to convey to us? And these are the things that I find the most fascinating, because I have no idea why somebody would come up with this character to put him into this telenovela and say, well, we need to insert now this character.
Yeah.
I still haven't figured out why exactly they needed him. What was the role? Because with Aisha and all these people, it's pretty clear. But Ali, for me, he only shows dissent. He only shows what is the negative side of Islam. That a character can come in there and cause total chaos. So for me, I've never worked out why Ali was put in there, or what role Ali is actually supposed to play.
Yeah. And Drastic, what any final words on Ali?
I'll have to watch your presentation and give them to you next week, I think.
Yeah. Oh, definitely give it. And leave a big comment. Leave a giant comment on your analysis too, please.
I will. You get a 10,000 word.
But yeah, I liked. I also agree with Zain and Stops that Ali seems to be like the dark side of Islam that's not talked about, like the dark, the yin and the yang. Well, a very complex person. He's not seen as perfect, but also perfect. So he's kind of like this weird character. But I'm very fascinated by the character myself too, because he is a very important figure in Islamic history, as well as the theology itself.
Yeah, there's this song about Ali, man, and I really like that song. Like, the tune is so catchy. It's sung by a young boy. His name is Amjad Baltistani.
Yeah.
And the tune is so catchy, and I totally recommend that to the viewers.
Okay, give it to us.
I'll send the link in the chat.
No, I thought you were going to sing it for us. Do a karaoke.
Do sing.
Dude, I don't sing anymore. I used to win awards years ago, but I'm totally out of it now.
No, talk is cheap. We want a demonstration. Come on, sing.
No, I have to turn that down, guys. I'm sorry. I really don't want to make you run away.
But thank you guys so much. Thank you for joining me. I think we'll say our goodbyes here. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for joining us. Thank you, Stops. Thank you, Drastic Measures. Thank you, Zain. And where the heck did Nick go? I think I'll find him and I'll probably beat him as well.
He collapsed.
I'll flog him.
Collapsed laughing when he read the comments of door knocking.
Yes, thank you so much. And watch him up, put on the fridge. Just go. Oh my goodness.
Drastic, just stick around for a second, please.
Who, me?
Drastic.
Sure, no problem.
All right, but thank you so much, and have a nice day, guys. And I'm ending the broadcast.
Take care. Good night.
Take care.